Hey, what's going on, guys? Jake Verdon Tech here, and today we are going to talk about the Asus ROG Zephyrus M15, but more specifically, we're going to talk about how this laptop performs when hooked up to an external monitor. So it's been a hot minute since we have talked about this particular laptop. I've had a few videos on it. When I first bought it, which was a big hit. A lot of people really liked that video. I had another one going over how to cool this laptop down a little bit by undervolting. And I had one that was a little bit later, kind of a more in-depth review. So today is the video where we're going to talk about how it performs when plugged into an external monitor. So I want to cater this video not just to people looking to buy this very specific laptop, but I want this to also apply to other laptops that have very similar specs, as we can imagine that they will perform pretty similar when it comes to external monitor performance, as long as they have, similar specs as far as the graphics card, CPU goes, because this is a pretty general category now, speaking in terms of ultra thin gaming laptops. And I think this video will really help those of you who are looking for a new primary system. Maybe you're juggling back and forth between whether you want to go with a desktop or a laptop, to get an idea on how this system performs in maybe a docked setting. So if this is your primary system, you bring it with you on the go and you use it as a laptop, and along with that you bring it home, dock it, and you continue using it as a desktop PC. This will give you a really good idea on how it'll perform temperature wise, FPS wise, and through a number of different workloads. So as far as the test goes for the Asus ROG Zephyrus M15, the test that I have planned for it, we're going to be using two different monitors. One is going to be just a standard 1080p IPS panel that is a really basic budget monitor that I have. It's actually one of these Dell 24-inch monitors, but they're 1080p IPS 60 Hz, so it's going to be the lighter of the two panels as far as strain on the system. Then we're going to move over to the Alienware AW3418DW ultrawide panel, and it is a 1440p ultrawide, so that's where it is going to get a little bit more intensive of a workload for the graphics card on our Zephyrus M15. And then for the tests that we're doing on these monitors is going to be quite the variety. We're going to start off by just seeing how the temps do at idle. Then we're going to move into maybe something like basic web browsing and monitor the temperatures from there. And then we're going to throw in some more intensive stuff like gaming and really get an idea on what kind of temperatures we're getting while gaming and what kind of FPS we're getting while gaming. And we'll be testing a few different titles as well. So like I mentioned, I have not hooked up the Zephyrus M15 into an external monitor yet, so I have no idea how it performs as far as temperatures go, FPS goes. We just have no idea yet. And that is a big concern for a ultra slim gaming laptop like this, and especially for those of you that are considering purchasing it and running it as your primary system, where you do have it docked with an external monitor, is what kind of performance you'll be getting as far as temperatures go, because ultra thin gaming laptops like this one do tend to run pretty warm, and especially when the graphics workload is enhanced to an external monitor, it'll be interesting to see how much temperature increase we get out of that. And there are some notable detriments to running a system at higher temperatures, both short term and long term. Short term, you're looking at a downfall in your FPS while gaming. As you hit those higher temperatures on your GPU and CPU, and you get closer to thermal throttling, you will notice a decrease in FPS and performance. And on the long term side, running your system at higher temperatures can destroy the longevity of your system. Okay guys, with all of that out of the way, I'm going to try and get this setup configured. We're going to first run some tests on the 1080p panel, then we're going to move up to the 1440p ultrawide and see how it does. Alrighty guys, after quite the marathon of tests on the Asus ROG Zephyrus M15 when plugged into two external monitors, not at the same time, but one being a 1920 by 1080 display and the other being a 3440 by 1440p ultra wide panel, we got all of the numbers we were out to get, such as the high temps for the CPU and GPU and our average FPS. Overall, it was kind of to be expected with the results we got. I was a little surprised we didn't see any higher temperatures than what we got, given that we were definitely upping the graphic workload, including much more pixels for this system to push, given that we were using a 3440 by 1440p ultra wide panel. But luckily we didn't see our core hardware exceed the 85C mark, which is pretty good for this laptop, given before I did any undervolting to this laptop, without an external monitor, we were hitting in the upper 80s. Breaking down the numbers, first off we have CSGO, which we did have some warm temperatures, and that was across the board, being in the 80s or so, were our maximum thermals on both the CPU and GPU, which is very warm, but it's kind of to be expected out of a ultra slim gaming laptop like this one. Running an ultra slim gaming laptop to play CSGO with a external 1080p panel is extremely viable, given the fact that we had an average of 225 FPS and we saw some very high spikes into the mid 300s. So extremely good frame rates, and that's kind of as expected with such a well optimized title like CSGO. Quickly jumping into Heaven Benchmark, we got a pretty good average FPS of 174.2 during our benchmark test, and the temps I saw max out at about 82C and 79C on the GPU. Overall this wasn't bad, but the downside was when I tried to run it on our ultra wide panel, I couldn't get it to go to its native resolution. Unfortunately, the highest resolution I saw in the stack was a 2560p resolution, and it was just kind of a stretched image, so I can't really count a test towards the full native 3440 by 1440 because it didn't have it available on my laptop configuration, and I've ran it before on my desktop no problem, and that resolution always shows up, but it didn't unfortunately on the laptop. I'm not sure if it's because of the HDMI 2.0B that we had connected to it or something like that, but I didn't see that setting in Heaven Benchmark in this scenario. Next up, talking about Rocket League, it was an extremely enjoyable experience on both 1080p and 1440p ultra wide, as the temperatures and the FPS really didn't vary much between monitors, and I think this is just because it is a very easy game to run, given that it's all smooth textures and stuff like that, but we got really good frame rates, 145 on average for FPS, and then the temperature just dropped a couple degrees on the CPU and GPU going to 1080. So Rocket League on both panels for a external monitor on a ultra slim gaming laptop was extremely user friendly and a great experience to game on. And last but not least, our more realistic first person shooter was Insurgency Sandstorm, which you guys have probably seen me run in the past on this laptop. And with an external monitor, it ran really well. Oddly enough, we didn't really have any temperature change from the two different panels, but we did have a big FPS increase when we went down to the 1080p panel. On average, we gained about 65 FPS going down to the 1920 by 1080p resolution panel. I did run Insurgency on low settings just to ensure we had the best gaming experience possible and the best player movement. And even on ultra wide, it was still a really good experience, averaging around 85 FPS. So wrapping up all of this data and my final thoughts on running an external monitor with a ultra slim gaming laptop of this tier, I would say overall it's a fair experience depending on the monitor you're trying to run. I would say I didn't have a absolutely spot on experience with the ultra wide panel, just because of the inconsistencies. Performance wise we were typically there, but not being able to use it on certain titles like Heaven Benchmark and Overwatch was another one I was going to attempt, but we had such bad lag in the menus, and getting it to its native 3440 by 1440p resolution just wasn't happening, so we scrapped Overwatch unfortunately. for this test. With that being said, in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend a ultra wide panel like this one for a ultra slim gaming laptop, just because of those inconsistencies when playing a wide variety of games can be a real pain, not being able to run on certain titles. When inside the NVIDIA control panel and some of the Windows settings panels, it said I was maxed out to 50 hertz on my 100 hertz ultra wide panel, and there was no way around that. But when I did get into games, I definitely wasn't running at 50 hertz, as it seemed more like the native 100 hertz of this monitor. So that was another issue that was a little bit strange, but I don't think it rendered our performance any. It just showed up as 50 hertz. Now, 1080p gaming was a pretty seamless experience as an external monitor for our Asus ROG Zephyrus M15. We got a slight temperature decrease going down to 1080p versus 1440p ultra wide, and we did get quite the boost in FPS performance. I think the biggest thing with the 1080p gaming is just the seamlessness and how user friendly it is connecting a 1080p external monitor to this particular gaming laptop, and probably other ones similar to its class, as we didn't have near the configuration issues of a 21:9 aspect ratio monitor. A 16:9 is so standard, and pretty much all titles will support it. So my final recommendations, if you are set on going with a gaming laptop for your next system, and you're in the scenario where you are going to be using this system full time on the go, and then when you get home you want to plug it into some peripherals and an external monitor, I would recommend either sticking with 1080p or going maybe up to a 1440p that isn't ultra wide, sticking with the 16:9 aspect ratio, maybe like a 2560 by 1440, just to get you a little bit more resolution. Ultra wide is definitely doable performance wise. I just can't fully recommend it due to the incompatibility issues with certain titles. But if you are just looking for a more productivity monitor where you'll have lots of tabs and windows open, I think this laptop and other ones of its class can handle ultra wide just fine. Gaming is just a little bit inconsistent, which is really unfortunate because it did play really well on certain titles. And overall, through all of our tests, these were very warm temperatures. So one other thing I would recommend is probably getting a cooler pad. I haven't used them personally, but I've had lots of people mention to me that they've gotten really good results with them, and we might be testing some here on the channel pretty soon. That's going to wrap up this one, guys. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this gave you a pretty good insight on what to expect when you hook up your ultra slim gaming laptop into an external monitor, either 1080p or a 1440p ultra wide. Or if you are curious and you're in the market for a gaming laptop, hopefully this video gave you a really good insight on what the performance is like. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to drop a like on it, and if you want to see more tech related videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.